Hi, I'm Clara, and this is the Practice with Clara podcast, where we go into yoga philosophy and how it makes your life better. Subscribe to the podcast. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Practice with Clara podcast. I'm Clara, and you're sitting with my co-host, Stephanie. And today we have a wonderful guest named Maria Garre, who is an Ayurvedic counselor or doctor?
Practitioner and
therapist, thank you, as well as a yogini, yoga teacher. She also teaches yoga teacher training and, has been a wandering yogi for many, many years. I met Maria, I think in 2003, back in the NYC. We had a mutual teacher, Shiva, that Maria was working and assisting with, and we hit it off. And I've been enjoying being in your presence in many different ways. I was able to study under Maria for Ayurveda, so most of what I know is because of your wonderful knowledge. And so I'm so thankful to have you on the podcast and to introduce you to my community if they don't know you. So Maria, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited anytime I get to talk about Ayurveda. It's exciting to me. So thank you. And I love these new endeavors that we've all manifested in these pandemic times.
Yes, we have. Who knew?
Yeah. Who knew? Who knew? God, who knew?
Yeah.
So Maria, we like to introduce our guests to our audience just with 3 kind of fun random questions for our listeners to get a feel for who you are. Mm-hmm. The first one is, if you could choose any period to live in, what era would you choose and why?
Well, I think it'd be the Roaring 20s for me. Just the famous Roaring 20s of the U.S., even though, U.S. culture is something I learned as an immigrant. But the Roaring 20s and the Great Gatsby, probably from reading the book and, reading Hemingway and it looked really fun, and I love fashion. So, the fashion was spot on. We got rid of the corsets and all that crap. And yeah, I felt like the women began to liberate themselves in the 20s. I think was the real push of the feminist movement. So I think I'd go there.
I feel the exact same way. That's the exact era I would also be for. It was Roaring 20s. The art was also amazing. Like, there was so much good music, was phenomenal, right? Film was just starting to do its thing.
Yeah,
I'd be right there with you dancing.
Yeah, it seemed like a lot of Shakti, in the 20s. So, and I always like a good party. So there's that. Fun party, dancing and intelligent conversation.
Yes.
Yeah, of course, good food and fun little glasses and that kind of stuff.
I love it.
Okay, next question. What are 3 things you never leave home without? And if you could speak to 3 physical things and 3 abstract things that you always leave the house with.
Host. What? 3 things
home,
I leave.
Like the house.
Home. Oh, okay. So 3. Wow, being so nomadic for so long. That's a funny question. Because I gave up a home 2 years ago. And anyway, but 3 things I would not leave home without, like when I'm packing my bags to go travel and teach, no matter where I am. Number 1, I would never leave home without a tongue scraper.
Yes.
Gotta say, like that tongue scraper is really important to me. So tongue scraper is something I would never leave home without. I'm always in travel mode, so I would never leave home without that. That is so important to me. I think I'd say that I try to never leave home without my dog, Raja. So whether that counts or not, but
it definitely counts.
But I don't like to leave home without him. Even now, I'm like, let's go get juice. Okay, come on, hop on the scooter. We were just always together. Unless, he defies me and hides under the bed. So I try not to leave home without him, almost never. And the other thing is, I gotta say, going on a trip, I would never leave home with some form of oil. I can survive without a lot of things, but I can't survive without oil. So oil is an important one, whether it's whether it's something easy like almond oil or because I'm going to ask sesame oil, but oil has to be with me because I feel like it fixes all things. And I guess if the dog doesn't count, then ghee is oil, so see, that doesn't count. Yeah, chunk scraper, raja, and oil. We're good.
Yeah. And then what do you leave? What won't you leave home with in terms of in your heart or in your head? Like something abstract.
Well, now that I live in Costa Rica, I would say since I moved here, every time I left, I never, in my head, never left the ocean and the sense of the ocean, and I mean,
beautiful.
surfing. So that's my happy place, like my place where the world is turning upside down, and I can certainly sit in front of my altar, but to me, there's nothing like the ocean and water, just water in general, because I think I find peace in a lake or a river. So I try never to leave the feeling of the ocean behind. And
beautiful.
And my connection, and you know, it's still water, but my Ganga is its own separate thing. But I always have, it's always water, but my 20 years was consistently going to India, except for now. The Ganga it holds a really, or the Himalayas, just the Himalayas in general, and everything I know about that, and trekking and being there, like they continuously live in my heart all the time, lives in my heart. And faith is the only other thing that I never leave home without.
Yes.
Faith. Shraddha, faith.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Great answers.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. What's your superpower?
Oh, I always ask people this question. Isn't that funny? But I say, what would you like your superpower to be? But my personal superpower, yeah, like Wonder Woman. So my superpower might be manifesting her, but what is my superpower? I believe my superpower is well, I mean, the dumbest way, but in a good way. I mean, but it's just organization. I can take chaos and organize it really well. So I feel like that's a superpower I have, where people are like, I can come in. So I think that's one of my superpowers is organizing chaos. I mean, not that I don't have chaos. I got plenty. I can organize everyone else's chaos really well. Really
interesting.
Well. Yeah.
You should come over to my house.
Yeah, totally. Okay. I'm like, And cool. Thank you. That's awesome. Can you just share, so you moved to Costa Rica 2 years ago from New Mexico. And so tell us about the move, because those are two very different places.
Oh, crazy town. Well, I mean, you have to realize that I moved to New Mexico for the guru. So my move to New Mexico wasn't a love of New Mexico. And being an immigrant from Argentina to Maryland, or we could just say the East Coast of the United States, I really never left the East Coast. It was always really hard to leave the tiny family I had, my mom, my brother. So I always stayed East Coast, Philadelphia, New York. I did a little stint there well before Sonic Yoga when I attempted medical school. So I've never left too far from home, even for college. And so my first move was New Mexico, and that was to study with the guru and be with the guru. And that was supposed to be a short-term move, but it ended up being a 10-year move.
Yes, and then tell us who the guru is. Tell our listeners who.
Now, the guru is Dr. Vasant Lad of the Ayurvedic Institute.
There you go. So
I met him in 2006 while I was at the Kripalu School of Ayurveda. And then in 2010, it took me 3 years, takes a lot to pack up one's life. We'll leave community. I think, Clara, you understand. It's like the hardest thing is, okay, how do I leave community and build, and this time was to just anyway, so I moved to New Mexico, and I mean, I love New Mexico. I have my school there, New Mexico School of Yoga. Like, I really do love all the land and the Native American feel. So I love it there, but I am a water girl. Like, I need water. And I actually left my love of surfing to follow Guru. I used to, living on the East Coast, I was in the ocean surfing, something I loved. And when I immersed deep eat deep into study, I went deep, and I kind of like, I went into a cave, we could say. I didn't lose myself, but I did give up, things that I absolutely love.
Yes.
But that's what you do. I mean, so different than going to medical school or whatever.
Yes.
And then when that ended, that path ended, I just sat down. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, okay, you mean your school is here, but you can live anywhere you want, because the reality is my free time is when I'm not teaching.
Yes.
So where would you like to spend your free time? And the answer was, Costa, Costa Rica, which is where you went in 2007. And like, even then, I was like, God, how do people live here? How do people do this? How does that happen?
Yes.
And for me, it had to be really slow. I don't have thousands of dollars, where I can be like, I'm just gonna, so it's really been a slow move.
Yes.
Of like figuring it out and, finding grant. I mean, it is. It's just, it was slow, especially moving to another country. I mean, unless you have a company paying things, I mean, it's such a thing.
Yes.
So it was a very slow move that I began in 2018, and I would say really solidified in 2019.
Okay.
Yeah. And, who thought I would be teaching from here too? This was supposed to be my non-teaching place.
Right. And here you are.
Yeah. Here I am.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. And I mean, I discovered Nosada because of Shiva Ray. I came to a sister retreat, and I was like, I'm staying.
I'm not leaving.
Not leaving.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful place. So now Shiva just comes and visits you.
Correct. Yeah, she's coming on the 11th. I can't wait.
Awesome.
Trying to talk her into staying longer.
Yeah, I love it. So we, coming into Ayurveda, we're asking all our practitioners, how would you define Ayurveda to someone who doesn't know what it is?
Oh, yeah. So first I would say, that happens a lot here in Costa Rica. So Ayurveda, first and foremost, it is a medical science that comes from the great land of India. So it is, quote unquote, Indian medicine, just like we would say Chinese medicine. Acupuncture is a style of medicine and form of medicine from China that's pretty popular. Well, India and the Himalayas, because it was really that whole Himalayan region way back then, 5,000 years ago, developed a system of medicine in order to keep the population healthy. And it was called Ayurveda. And this system of medicine, which really translates to the knowledge of life, the wisdom of life, honestly, it is about that. The premise of Ayurveda is understand how to live in balance and recognize how to live in flow with your entire environment. And then there shall be health. And when there isn't health, then that means something got out of balance, and we identify what that imbalance is, and we bring the body back to balance, which means back to health. And how do Ayurveda did that? Well, Ayurveda did that with herbs. Ayurveda did that with surgery long ago.
Yes.
Ayurveda did it with therapies. It did it with many different things. But it is a system of legit science, white coat medicine.
Beautiful. How did you come about? How did you you find Ayurveda, or Ayurveda found you?
Yeah. It found me through yoga, through my studies of yoga, basically. Science found me first. So my love of science as a university student, my love of science, which took me to medical school, my love of science, which took me to get a biomedical degree in viruses and virology. So it's like, I've been waiting for COVID. No, I haven't. Not at all. Not at all. But I got it. I mean, like when it came down, I was like, oh, people buckle up. You know what I mean? I was like raised around this. My dad is a famous virologist. Like my dinner tables were about viruses and bacteria my entire upbringing.
Whoa.
So when this came in March, I was like, I hope you people can sustain all your little like daily Instagrams, because you got this for a year. Like I knew I buckled down, and I mean, I knew for very various reasons. So anyways, long story short with that, sorry, we just overheated the iPad. Long story short with that, then medicine never met me where I needed it to meet me in my heart. It just didn't. Like I loved it. I love science. But it didn't meet me in a place where I was like, I can't explain it, but fulfilled, really fulfilled. I was fulfilled in my head academically, and I mean, so so eventually the path of yoga, both with my teacher in Philadelphia, Janine Galati, because we had to read the book called Perfect Health by Deepak Chopra as part of my teacher training, which I began with her in like 1998, and then I met Shiva in 2000, and like met James, who was like, oh, a legit Ayurvedic practitioner here in front of me. Do you know what I mean? So between reading Perfect Health and studying with Janine Galati in Philadelphia, and then like really being stoked, you know, when I met James and like
Yes.
Google-eyed, then it was like sold, done deal. I wish I had known about this, you know, 10 years ago.
Right. Right.
Whatever, path is the path.
Yeah. And here we are today.
And here we are today. So, I mean, you know, all it is as it is.
You brought up that you knew, like, what would you say in terms of like right now, since we are dealing with COVID, like what are 3 things that you would recommend that everybody should be doing on the daily?
Ayurvedically?
Yes, Ayurvedically.
I mean, like everyone would be like, wear a mask and wash your hands, right? Okay. Because I think that's obvious that you should wear a mask and wash your hands. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. We got those. We got
and
those
social
too.
distancing. Yeah. I mean, it's real. Actually, I you know, I congratulate Canada because I watch your numbers. And even today, like I saw, like, wow, really good. So congrats, you know, good job, Canadians. Because the Americans are really, really showing you what not to do. So I mean, there you have that. So you know, polarity is good.
Yeah. Just a border away.
But okay, yeah. So Ayurvedically, because like for example, I had to go to San Jose, which is a main city here, to do like, you know, to get some things because I live in the jungle. So I was very concerned because I was going into a high area. So what I did, one of the most important things that I did was every time I came back from like shopping and doing all that, I came back and I gargled with salt water and turmeric.
Okay.
So saltwater turmeric gargles, really, really important. Like I got my mom on that right away. My mom's 84. I mean, she's like on the list of will die if she gets corona.
Yes.
And I don't say that lightly. Like it freaks me out. So I was like, you better start gargling every time you come back from shopping, like because it's already been shown one of the places that the virus will sit for quite a while is back here. And the fact that the virus was attacking, or, you know, it keeps changing what we know. It seems to be more bloodborne, but it's still getting in your juices and rasa, like the juices of the body.
Yes.
It's also being found to live a really long time in your GI tract, right? So, and 2 places where, you know, immediately I was like throat. I mean, because it's going from the nasal passages to the throat. So first thing is after you go out, like salt water, turmeric, it's so easy to do. Just have it ready at your kitchen sink. Warm water, salt water, turmeric. As a matter of fact, you just take salt and turmeric and just make yourself little concoctions. And you're not always blending it. You just have like a little tube right there by the kitchen sink. It's the easiest place to gargle. Like, you know, and you do that for like a minute, like the whole glass. Very simple, like takes 2 seconds. So I like practical things. The other really thing I recommend is Nasya. I think, again, you know, really protecting the nasal passages and doing Nasya. So Nasya is critical right now, meaning that you're putting Ayurvedic oils inside of the nose. And most of those Nasya formulations have eucalyptus, or, you know, they have pungent kinds of herbs or herbs or oils that are going to immediately already support killing whatever might be there. And it's also supporting mucosal immunity. So I think supporting mucosal immunity are like top. So that's why I say nose and then gargling. And the other thing is Ayurveda would say is keep Agni strong, your digestive fire. It's really important because if your gut is strong, you know, your gut also will kill the virus. So one thing that you can do is really monitor the strength of Agni. One of my favorite formulations as we're going into winter is called Tricatu, and it's really easy to make at home because it's equal amounts of dried ginger, black pepper, and long pepper, also known as pipali. So you combine those 3 in equal proportions and you make a mixture.
Okay.
And then you keep that, I made some for myself because I can't buy Tricatu, right? But miracle that what I don't leave with home is Indian spices. So somehow I ended up in the jungle with tons of cardamom pods, coriander seeds, pipali. Like, do you know what I mean? Like I came with a container of spices. Who knew, you know, when I landed in February that like me hoarding spices was a good idea. And so I made my little chickadee mixture and I have it in my tin can. So during rainy season, you know, sometimes Agni plummets or if it's really hot out. So I just take some chickadee with honey, and that will burn anything and cleanse the GI tract. So those are three things that you're doing with spices. You know, my Ayurveda has drastically changed for myself because I have access to 0 herbs. So I have learned how to, it's like my new skill set is like using spices in all the medicinal ways, but you have to dose it quite high in order to get that benefit. But those are the three things I'd be doing.
And so with those with those spices, are you putting it in water? Or are you just eating it?
Chickadee and honey.
Yeah,
administration is really good, and specifically for winter. So I am giving the fall winter. You would mix it with honey. So you just take a 1/4 teaspoon of chickadee with honey, and take that teaspoon of mixed honey inside your mouth, and then, you know, a little warm water to wash it down. You can do it right after food is a good time.
Okay.
Like finish eating, kind of that's your dessert.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question that it's around much of what you've said, considering COVID, and Maria, your background. And it's also coming from 2 of our previous guests were Ayurvedic counselors as well. So I'm kind of tying in bits from those conversations and bringing it to you. I'd love your insight. So one of our guests mentioned ama and how ama, the toxins build up in the body, and it can be food, it can be environments, it can be violence you see on TV. And then another guest was mentioning how COVID is really stressing our immunity and our aura. So the ways that we protect ourselves are being threatened. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts around, in terms of COVID and how it's occurred, what are the different types of ama that have built up over, you know, years or decades within us as a society for this virus to occur, if anything that comes to mind?
Yeah. So I have such a classical view of Ayurveda, possibly from my training with Dr. Lad and in India, because I've trained in India as well. There's mental ama and there's physical ama.
Yes.
Inside the body, that's what I was talking about, Agni. If you have good Agni, you're not going to have ama. There's going to be no physical ama when you have good Agni, which is why I said you take care of ama, as you take care of Agni, you're good.
Yes.
So I always think, and you know, I'm always going to what is. I highlight the best rather than like thinking of ama. So let's not worry about ama. Keep good Agni, right?
Great.
Instead of yeah. Number 1. Number 2. Ayurveda is super clear. You get rid of ama twice a year, fall and spring. You cleanse, you detox. When the sun and the moon are balanced, you don't cleanse in January, you don't cleanse in February. You cleanse during the equinoxes, during the even balance. So if you're following Ayurvedic protocol of cleansing physical and mental ama, because let me tell you, lots of mental ama comes out in a physical detox. I'm like literally just finished. And again, I had to adapt it like none other because I've been going to India for 20 years to cleanse. Well, I've been doing it on my own too, but you know what I mean? Like I've been really advanced, like what I know cleansing can do when you have all the Indian pharmacology behind you and all that. So again, what was I going to do? Oh, well, I can't cleanse because I'm not in India and I don't know how I'm like, no, you're going to figure this out. You're going to figure this out. So I did. And it was really powerful. I was like, whoa, okay. Like this stuff works, even at the most basic level. You know, it worked. So lots of mental fear came out. Like it was really, really emotional as well as it is physical, panchakarma. So I feel like we can take care of a lot of the mental and physical amana that we accumulate personally every year by just following Ayurveda. I mean, I can't say enough about it. But and we cleanse and we really stick to, okay, the fall is the time to clear out the year, really clear it out, and the spring, well, the spring is the time to celebrate my renewal. Yes. So there's very different energies around the detoxing, but they're really important times for us to reset both our mind, our spirit, and ourselves. And interestingly enough, there's a spring Navratri and there's a fall Navratri. I wonder why there's a celebration to the goddess during 2 equinox periods, right? because that's the spiritual part of I reconnect back to the light of goodness.
Yes.
Because we are challenged daily whether goodness will prevail. You're like, is good really gonna win? Because I'm not sure, you know. And there's so much doubt. So I feel like we do that, we really take care of it for ourselves. Now, if you want to talk about the universal level of ama and like quote unquote solution, sure, it's there. But see, Ayurveda is really clear. When we talk about the body, we just talk about the body. And if we are following Ayurvedic principles properly, we're actually taking care of the environment. So Ayurveda didn't have, Ayurveda really didn't have to say, hey, don't pollute. Because Ayurveda began with the premise of what? The premise was, don't hunt an animal that looks sick. Never eat the meat of a sickened animal. So when you're going for the hunt, make sure that you are hunting the proper animal who's not like nursing a baby, you know what I mean, who's not in hibernation. Like there was the art of the kill, because Ayurveda is not a vegan science. You never take disease food. You if the plant looks like it's falling apart, no, don't eat that fruit.
Yes.
So that means you have to take care of the environment. So see, really, it all went together. And how Ayurveda would address it is we're in a relationship with ourselves, with the planet, with people, with animals, with rocks, with plants. Ayurveda is all about relationships. And we take care of those relationships, then we're all going to be good. If the planet is sick, we're going to be sick.
Right.
So Ayurveda addressed it in that way. Now, what I think about like what coronavirus speaks as far as like the hidden messages, my viewpoint on that is if you look at the history of coronavirus as coming from also part of the SARS family, right? And this is not the first time we've been hit with, you know, we have SARS. SARS is not that distant should not. So what was always the underlying factor? The underlying factor is, and I'm not here to bash China, but I am here to say is that China needs to take responsibility for its greedy practices. So we're here because of human greed. We're here from human greed of eating exotic animals because their greed leads them to think it's something fancy. So the inhumane treatment of living beings because of greed, the Great Mother will teach you a lesson.
Beautiful.
Right? So that would be the Vedic view. The Vedic view, Ayurveda being Vedic, is that we're here because of greed. Now, I find it interesting that at first, it really seemed like coronavirus was fully attacking the lungs, which is the pulmonary system, which is, of course, if we want to relate it, I mean, I'm going to take it back to then the air, pollution of the air. I mean, this isn't anything new. But I'm like, the planet can't breathe anymore. We can't breathe anymore. And the lungs represent grief. So the planet is grieving. Therefore, we are grieving. And we are. I think as a world, there's more grief than ever. So that's where I see the alignment of it. But at the end of the day, it is a virus. And not only is it a virus, I mean, its number one goal isn't to kill us. We are already seeing mortality rates dropping. Now, the pathology that comes once you get it and the underlying conditions that are left as a precipitate of this virus, they're not good times. I have no interest in getting the virus, not because I'm afraid of death, but because I feel that it has lasting implications. And it should, because we need that wake-up call. And we also need governments that are going to hold other governments responsible for their inhumane practices. The time is now. We have no more time. More time. So, but it's not going to stop until we stop being so greedy, you know. And if we don't learn this lesson of greed, it shall come again. It shall come again. We'll be slightly more prepared, but 3-4 years from now, something else will cycle.
Great answer. That went. Thank you. That went in so many directions that are wonderful. Yeah, and then you came back in.
She always does. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Thank you for that. That was like, that. And so how do you think that we can, like as a human race, work on our greed? Like, what are your thoughts around that? Because I know you have some.
Well, yeah, but I mean, the thoughts we know is what we teach. It's yoga.
Yeah.
We keep trying to fill ourselves with everything outside, but the reality is it's useless. It's baseless. It's temporary. And don't get me wrong, I love things. I love things. I'm material girl all the way. Thank you, Madonna. Okay, thank you. She's still like one of my heroines, right? So God bless her. But the teaching, enjoy it, but don't be attached to it.
Yes.
Enjoy it, relish in it, love it. But if it goes, it goes, and then let it go.
Yes.
And then, just being more aware. So it's not about, people have to, it's not just all or nothing. And we have to realize that not being greedy is just by realizing when enough is enough.
Yes.
When I'm full, and it's not even full, I'm actually satisfied, right? Because that's what Ayurveda says. Do you eat till you're full? No, just eat till you're satisfied. Just be satisfied. Well, like, good enough. And so I feel like when we live lives that really teach us how to just be like, oh yeah, this is satisfying, then we can temper greed. And greed at the end of the day is just a substitute for filling something up.
Mm-hmm.
And when we find that we don't need to do this, then it's going to be better. But it's a definite collective awakening. At the end, and also I gotta say, Kali Yuga. I mean, we're also in Kali Yuga, like benevolent. There's going to the world. Also, the manifest world can't exist without good and bad. So the reality is we're always going to have some greed, but what we need to do is we got to have less greed.
Yes.
So greed will be there. It's going to be there. So be like, oh, everyone's going to be, I don't know. I'm not that Pollyanna. I'm slightly Pollyanna, but not that Pollyanna. That all we need to do is just try to sway the pendulum towards less greedy.
Yes.
70-30. That would be a nice statistic.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
One of my teachers used to say, and she'd bring up the iPhone. She would always talk, not always, but several classes she'd bring up like technology and the iPhone. And she'd ask like, what is necessary? Like whatever it is you're doing or consuming, like always pause and ask like, is what I'm doing right now absolutely necessary? Like if you're still hungry, keep eating. If you want to like double tap for an hour on Instagram and let that consume your day, go for it. But just that idea of like what you're bringing in, put the little pause first to see like, is this necessary? And then the step after that she would add is, what is my intention when I'm doing this? Like where's the heart in what I'm doing, or what's my desired outcome of what I'm doing? So it's that just adding in those little breaks where you're inquiring into, you're checking in with yourself.
Well, but self-reflection only comes, I believe, when we practice meditation of some kind.
Some way, shape, or form.
Sorry, like whether your meditation is like sitting in the ocean, I don't care. I mean, it could be painting. But ideally true meditation is just become one with that which you are doing. That's really, dharana to be on. So it's not like I'm going to sit and om all day long, but it's really become one with what you're doing. And in that place, that flow of meditation, deep clarity comes, and then it teaches you to be mindful in your living place. Now, of course, we know that the practice of structured meditation, having a meditation practice, learning to focus on your breath, mantra, whatever. There's like 1,008 meditation practices, but having a practice is good because it trains the mind. And self-reflection at the end of the day is just exercising your mind. And if we just worked on exercising our mind as much as we did our bodies, the world would be in a better place. I mean, that is my answer. Yeah. So I'm like, let's stop obsessing on the treadmill and start obsessing on whatever, cushion you sit on to chill out and be one. So anytime we pause and self-reflect, like even just like not buying too many, coconuts or tomatoes or avocados. And then you're like, it pains me if I ever have to throw out food. Now, lucky me, I get to toss it in the jungle and the Pizzotis eat it. So it doesn't truly go to waste, but that's still not okay for me. Yeah. So basic awareness over what we are disposing, you know, what we're putting in the trash. I mean, I think it begins that if you control your trash, you control your greed.
Yes, I hear that.
I mean, it's crazy, but it's true. So I try to only have one trash bag a week.
Good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get to compost.
We do too. We all compost here too.
Yeah.
I'm going to
shift, you know what I mean? Yeah.
I'm going to shift gears a little bit. We had a couple of people ask this really great question on our Facebook group, so we thought we'd put it out to you. A couple of people we've been talking about Ayurveda on the Facebook group, and one woman asked, and I thought this would be a great one to ask you, is if you're out of balance, and food is a very large part of bringing us back into balance in terms of in our bodies, but you live in a family setting where maybe, you know, your husband or your child or whomever, the people that you live with, are not out of balance in that way. Like, how do you accommodate all the foods that we're supposed to be quote unquote eating or avoiding when you're like when you're cooking for more than one person, let's say, and you're kind of in different places, like you're not in the same out of balance as the people you live with? That was like a long-winded question, but
I got it.
Yeah.
Well, you're all living in the same environment, meaning you're living in the same location. So the reality is the foods you're picking should be the foods that are available based upon the season.
Yes.
So it would be absurd for anybody in Canada to be eating coconut anything right now, even cooking with coconut oil.
Yes.
So if you cook seasonally, no matter what, how out of balance you are, Ayurveda is always going to look for what's the best seasonal things that you can eat based on your out of balance constitution, number one.
Yes.
Okay. Number two, then if you know you have a vata imbalance, for example, and let's say it's a different kind of season, then what you can do is just favor more of those kinds of foods in the meal planning, but you're still in season. So it's not going to go throw anybody out of balance.
Okay.
And the reality is most families eat one meal together, dinner.
Yeah.
I think.
It's true. Yeah.
And maybe breakfast, but it seems to me, I mean, I don't have kids, I don't have a family, but I mean, I lived in one, and I have plenty of clients that have families, so I understand a little bit about the family dynamic. But I mean, based on how I remember my upbringing, not everybody ate the same breakfast, and no one was around for lunch, so dinner was the only meal we ate. So there's no way you can drive your family out of balance with just one meal, which is dinner. So you skew 70% of that meal towards the kinds of fruits and vegetables and meats you need to eat to bring yourself into balance.
Yes.
And choose tri-doshic seasonings, like whatever they might be. They're not too heating and are not too cooling, but they're kind of all in the middle. So then everyone's going to be fine.
Yes.
Then, then dinner becomes more of a slightly tri-doshic, but skewed to what you need. And then really take care of your imbalance for your breakfast and your lunch.
Okay.
That's where you should address it. And then you really take care of your imbalance with like good teas. Have the right herbal teas all day long. So your whole family isn't doing that either. So you're drinking the right teas for yourself. Make sure you have your doshically appropriate breakfast and lunch.
Yes.
And then you have a pretty tri-doshic but slightly skewed to you dinner. And I think your family will be just fine.
Okay.
What are the teas that each dosha should be drinking? Like, what are the pacifying teas?
Well, I mean, yeah, it does depend on the season, right? Because where we are, but vata, for example, is going to do really good with the kinds of teas that are going to be more warming and supporting circulation. So vata and kapha will do too, because kapha is cold. But kapha just maybe needs a little bit more spicy. So, and I do like I'm big on like just masala blends. So like for vata, it's really good to have some black peppercorns and some cinnamon, cardamom, nutmeg, like those kinds of things. Pitta needs to go a little bit more cooling. So, they'll do better with fennel and lemongrass, even pomegranate. And then kapha will do really well with things like cinnamon for sure. And then there's like a little licorice can be good for them as well. Licorice can also be really good for pitta, and I'm not talking about eating like candy licorice, but you can get like licorice, like slices of licorice,
the spice.
just in case.
Yeah.
I mean, I get all like, oh, you mean like, no, not Twizzlers.
I love Twizzlers.
I know, that'd be right. I'm like, I mean, sure, but you know.
No.
And they'll also do good. Kapha will do better with something like long pepper, pipali. Dried ginger is really good to bust that kapha down, where I would never give dried ginger to pitta, and for vata a little bit because it could be too dry.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
We have one other question. The trend right now, it seems, in a lot of the quote unquote fitness world is intermittent fasting. And so what are your thoughts about, or what is Ayurveda and your thoughts about intermittent fasting?
Well, it begins with for when and for whom.
Okay.
When and for whom will intermittent fasting work for, and constitution.
Yes.
Okay. And Agni level and activity level. So Ayurveda is not against, would never be against intermittent fasting. We have various types of fastings that we recommend. Fasting called thirsting, like fast liquid, so you get really thirsty. Fast, all kinds of different fastings. So we have different lists. Like I was like trying to run through the list. So there's various, but it's always for when, whom, and how long, and when is it appropriate, seasonally, and all that kind of stuff. So, for example, giving the digestive system a rest is definitely a good idea. Yes. The whole idea of allowing the digestive system to rest for 12 hours is a good idea. But then Ayurveda also says why some people do better with 3 meals a day, and some people do better with 2 meals a day.
Yes.
And also age, as we age, these differences are going to change. Agni is not going to be as strong for a 70-year-old person as it is for a 25-year-old person. And 25-year-old males have a way different metabolism than 25-year-old females as well. So it's so dependent also upon age and what's necessary. I can say personally, I have and do practice intermittent fasting, and it's just only something I began to do in my late 40s as I'm moving into menopause as a pitta vata and living in a hot environment.
Right.
I believe that intermittent fasting in the winter in Albuquerque never really went that well for me, and it's not like we're that cold. But I'm allergic to the cold. So there's that. Indian guru said I'm allergic to cold. I was like, I am. I feel it.
My husband would say the same thing.
I'm out of here. So it didn't. It was harder to maintain intermittent fasting. If I'm in the middle of teacher training and we do sadhana from 7 to 10, I'm eating at 10. I'm starving. Where normally I can, wake up, surf, come back, have some juice, and then just have lunch at 12 o'clock. So it's interesting, how surfing doesn't seem to it's different. I'm not teaching.
Yes.
So Ayurveda would say you have to follow hunger. You must follow hunger. But is intermittent fasting really good for a kapha vikriti or kapha imbalance? Absolutely. Absolutely. And can kapha as a general prakriti do better in intermittent fasting? 100%.
Yes.
Kapha constitution should actually, that's something good for them.
Yes.
But again, it depends where they are and, what's going on. But if someone who is high vata and already not getting good nourishment, maybe intermittent fasting could be the worst thing for them to do. It could make them too light. And not really be able to stay focused for work in the morning. So it really does depend. And everything's in flow. Today's nectar can be tomorrow's poison.
Yes.
So we must be careful as to thinking that we should do the same exact thing other than tongue scraping every single day. Now, there is no, that will never turn to poison. You know what I'm saying? So there's certain things that, yeah, of course, like brushing your teeth. These are cleanliness is something that is always important. So if we leave that on that side, then reality is even Abhyanga, every single day would never be something that Ayurveda recommends.
Yes.
Even though it's in this long ass dinacharya list that people think they're supposed to do in order to like have perfect health. And I'm like,
no.
Relative.
Yeah.
Yeah. So everything has its time and place, and only Ayurveda taught me that, honestly.
Yeah.
So it really wakes you up to the fact that no, you should not be a robot through life, doing the same thing all the time. And I believe everything has 6-week cycles. So I believe in reevaluating my personal practices in about every 6 to 8 weeks, because those are the shifts that living so close to the equator and really being in nature. I mean, like I'm about to come into a full year. February will be the first time in 30 years that I stayed in the same place. Crazy. But it's like a year of never leaving. That hasn't happened like since I graduated from since like I found yoga probably. Since I left the conventional world at 27 or something like that. But yeah, so it's a really long time, but it's been really wonderful teaching to see. And also this environment, I never grew up in like an equator jungle environment.
Yes.
So it's been in a wonderful Ayurvedic teaching just to, because Ayurveda was never a box, and we were never supposed to be Indian to practice Ayurveda. Ayurveda never said everyone eat khichdi. Ayurveda never said everyone must love cumin. They never said that. Ayurveda said live in harmony with your environment. Know what's around you. So, as I stay here longer, one of my goals will be to study like medicinal plants of Costa Rica because they are here. Yes. And I better get to know them if I'm staying here, because those herbs are going to work better for me than, than the stuff from India. Now there's certain things like ashwagandha that no one will ever beat, and sandalwood, but we have to find those constituents. So I think that's the most important thing.
Steph, you got something? I felt like you did.
Yeah. Just live in awareness.
My question is around the awareness and the reflection point, and it'd be cool if everyone could answer. Maria, starting with you. I'm just thinking in terms of and I kind of brought this up in a past talk, there's a certain formula of things to follow for Ayurveda to live in harmony, but this idea of constant reflection, coming back and shifting, like Maria, you said the 6-week cycles. So I'm wondering if, what's something that you're currently aware of right now or practicing right now that you've been working on in terms of Ayurveda in your sleep schedule or your diet or your activities as we've shifted into fall and slower with COVID. Like I know for myself, I'm out way less than I was this time last year. I was way more active. So what's something that you're conscious of that's shifted in your routine, and how are you managing it?
That's such a hard question because I'm living in a totally new environment for the first time in my life. So I've recreated myself in a new country through COVID.
Yes.
So my shifts see what I mean? And I also live in a place where everything's outdoors. So I only have to put on a mask, if I go to the grocery store. So it's what's really shifted for me is not traveling. What's shifted for me is not getting on an airplane. What's shifted for me is having to let go of, I was supposed to be in India right now, because I have, for the past 15 years, you could say that I've followed a travel norm.
You have.
And so what's really shifted for me is having to be in this moment and don't think about what would have been, what was on the calendar.
Right.
So what's shifted for me is just letting go of what was supposed to be in my 2020 calendar. Obviously, we're now at the end of the year, but I mean, in April, I had to really sit and be okay, you got to let go of the entire 2020 calendar. You just have to let it go. And half of 2021, which was already planned out, right? As we all know, we live. So what shifted for me is really deep acceptance of letting go of what could have been, should have been, and learn how to live in this new environment, in this new country, and make it work, because you can't go fly XYZ to earn the income that you were earning.
Yes.
And so I, you know what I mean? So I had to shift that. So not being on an airplane. Now, I'll say this, we were on a lockdown, and like you guys, well, I don't know how deep it was for you, but when COVID got really intense, we were only allowed to drive 1 day a week. Everyone had to be inside like by 5 o'clock, and things were closed at 5. The beach closed. I mean, there was no surfing, there was no walking on the beach. So, I mean, talk about freak out. I mean, big freak out. Like,
yes.
What? The ocean's right there. We can't go surfing? No one can get COVID in the ocean. I had to really, like, we all had to just accept this is the rule of the government, even though it made no logical sense whatsoever. But I get why they did it. I wasn't,
Yes.
I mean, no one was protesting it.
Yes.
Fine. I mean, you know, I understand. All good. So I had to learn how to go on walks on the river and get to the river, because it was allowed to go to the river. And, you know, and then, you know, I'm living in a new location. So using like Google Maps to like find little trails and like literally, cause I'm new. So I'm just like literally with Google Maps, like, y'all got myself lost in all kinds of trails. Then I'm trying to find secret ways to get to the beach on these trails just so I can see the ocean. Because there's lots of secret beaches, like walking through people's fincas and whatever, just to like see the waves. And so I had to adapt creatively.
Yes.
to do what I needed to do to not go crazy.
Yes.
I enjoy time at home, but I haven't my heart breaks for those of you who have to be indoors and you're not indoor people.
Yes.
There's a lot of indoor people out there, but the people who are not indoor people and
Yes.
are relegated indoors, that is a sadhana, man.
Yes.
Woo! That is like it is a sadhana. And so you have to find ways to open the window and just stick your head out like a sunflower and just stay there, just stay there, just stay. And then find friends, you know, like
Yes.
find friends who have balconies and be like, I won't breathe on you. Can I use your balcony? And so, you know, this is where community comes together, and the people who have good hookups should hook other people up.
I agree.
And,
Yes.
you know, and I think that's important, that community comes together. Like, we knew somebody who had private land with a beach. So, I mean, we didn't overuse it, but once a week, I mean, once we got that hookup, we were on that private land.
Yes.
I didn't surf out of respect, but my feet needed to touch that sand.
Yes.
So community comes together, and those I think who have more really need to support those who don't have enough for livelihood, not, you know, for anything else, but for livelihood. Like,
Yes.
if you have a big yard, invite your friends over.
Yeah.
And get a heated tent.
Yeah.
Whatever. But you got to make it happen. You got to know what it is you need, and then get creative about making it happen, and
Yeah.
not be like, oh, I just like, okay, well, I mean, if that's what you want to be your story, it's going to be your story.
Yes.
But
And
identify what you need and make it happen.
yeah, and I feel like this year is really about, I love the two things that I'm kind of pulling is adaptability and like and being proactive. Like we need to adapt to what's going on, because, well, it's changing. I feel like the landscape is changing. It's starting to, I feel like, mellow out a little bit, or not mellow out, but we're like starting to understand it, but we've had to adapt. And then the other part is definitely being proactive. Like you cannot passively just you can't be a passenger in this ride right now, because if you are, like, I feel like the depression levels, like the anxiety, all that is like so much higher if you just sit back and do nothing, you know. And so I love that. Yeah. And I love this idea of sharing with the community, in terms of, if you've got something, share it with people who may not have it. And definitely I feel like the biggest thing that I've seen here, at least for that, is like just a lot of people who live alone. I have friends who live alone who are not solitary people, right? And then when we were on lockdown, like just how intense that was for them, and how it so they were like, they had Zoom dates, and they were like, you know, trying to have Zoom parties and things like that, so that they are able to stay you know, connected to the community, because as we know, community is such a large part of like staying alive, to be honest, like
Mhm.
even just on a sanity level. So and so yeah, just kind of building on that, I feel the exact same way. I feel like this year has been about adaptability. You just moved, I just had a baby, and then we went into lockdown, so it's been like definitely adaptability here. And I feel like yeah, it's a changing landscape, and just to go with the flow is what I would say. Steph, how about
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
What have you been up to? Like what are
Um,
you working with right now?
I think my biggest thing, especially here in Vancouver, like we're shifting into the rainy season. Like even throughout the summer, I was really active. I was outside. I basically lived outside. I feel like when COVID hit in March, I spent those 6 months outside as much as I could. Like we didn't have any curfew bans or
No.
stipulations around hours or time spent outside.
And
Um,
Steph also lived on a tiny little boat, a
yeah, and I was
sailboat.
living
So
on a
there was also
sailboat.
that, like
Mhm.
her apartment was a sailboat. So
Kudos.
Nice.
So
Yeah,
that was a big
well,
part.
that helps.
Totally. But now, and I moved into, because of the cold, I moved into an apartment this fall. And like I said earlier, my lifestyle has slowed down massively. Like I don't have yoga classes to go teach. I don't have yoga classes to go take. And in that reflection piece, my diet has shifted massively. Like I'm noticing different things about my hunger level and the foods that I'm craving. And because of Ayurveda, I've cut out certain things to serve my dosha, but even that's probably part of it, is all things kind of connect and contribute. But just like when I'm hungry, what I'm eating, I'm just kind of opening to receive the shift and really paying attention to like, oh, my body wants this right now. Like something I was doing even before we started talking about Ayurveda was rubbing my feet in oil, because I was like, oh, my feet feel dry. Like, and I don't know, is this something that has always been there? And because I was so busy and external, I wasn't noticing, like, this is when I'm hungry. I feel like in the past, because of being busy, I was doing things out of necessity. Like I should eat right now. I've taught, 3 classes. It's
yes,
technically lunch. I should eat. But whereas
yes,
now I'm more inquisitive to like, my feet feel dry. I should put oil on them. I'm hungry, even though it's 4 o'clock. Well, I'm gonna eat. My body's telling me it needs something.
yeah,
That's been
yeah.
cool for me to pause, have that space, because yeah, life's really busy and full of abundance, usually for all of us. And I get swept up in that, buoyancy and community and doing all the things. So this has been a nice reflection and pause for me.
Yeah, in terms of the positive. One thing I just want to end on is like one of the greatest gifts, Maria. You gave me two really big gifts that I live with every single day. And the first one is to wake up and observe how I'm feeling and like what do I need,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, versus like what like when I remember studying with you in terms of Ayurveda, of like this is my dosha, and so I should always be eating these foods and be avoiding all these other foods. And like I think one of the greatest gifts you gave me is like throw all that away, and how do you feel right now? And like if you feel good, then keep doing what you're doing, and if you don't feel good, then like change it and fix it. And I found, and I wanted to thank you for that,
Yeah.
because it really has changed. I feel like I'm no longer, like you said, Ayurveda is not in a box. I was like in this box before. I was like, well, this is all the things that this is what my dosha says. Blah, blah, blah. And so I wanted to thank you for that. And the other thing that I share this in all the teachings, and is the rule of thumb of like attracts like and opposite heals. And I say that so much
Yeah, you
because
do.
yeah, I mean, like everybody around me is like, oh yeah, I'm like, it has changed everything for me, because especially as people start to learn about Ayurveda, they're like, well, like I love moving, and so of course, if I'm not feeling good, then I want to keep moving. And like, why would I have to do something different? And for me in my own body, realizing that like when I would do slower, like I love moving. So like the idea of like chilling out it's like so hard, but then doing it, you realize like, whoa, I do, it does literally shift everything in me, the way that I feel, just by quite simply thinking, what is it that I really want to do right now? And I'm spun out and kind of out in the ether. Like, how do I bring it back into the earth? And so, yeah, I just really like you've changed my life in so many ways. So I just actually wanted to take this opportunity to
Thank
thank
you.
you for that.
Oh.
And
Well,
it shifted.
Ayurveda changed your life.
Yes. Well, but being with you changed my life, and listening to you, and I felt like the way that you delivered your message was it really landed for me, where I felt like I'd heard it before, but it didn't speak the same
Yeah.
language I was speaking.
Mm.
So, yeah. So thank you for doing the work that you do. I'm like, it has affected me, and then all the people around me. Steph can definitely attest to that. So
yes.
yeah.
Well, that's the guru mission, you know. I mean, if we go back to the lineage of Ayurveda, where, you know, Brahma taught it to Indra, and there's a whole lineage. Why was it offered? It's because we are to share it.
Yes.
And so following the guru mission is share it, you know.
Yes.
And so to honor my teachers is to share and be the ambassador of the work, and never. The glory is the glory of Ayurveda. I could definitely celebrate a gift, the gift that I have of Jupiter, of I think being a good teacher, but the glory always rests in Ayurveda. So, you know, being humble, but at the same time recognizing our gifts, or, you know, it's a dual balance. Yeah.
Yes. So I think this is a perfect place for us to end. And so, Maria, where can people find you? Obviously in Nosara, they can find you, but online, where can they find you? Great, at mariagarre.com.
So 2 places, Maria, So my just my website, but really my website definitely, and New Mexico School of Yoga. I mean, that's where all my programs are, and I mean they're both fine either way. You'll find me through both ways. One is more my school, and one is just me personally. But you know, my teaching time is devoted to the school.
Perfect. And we'll have that posted. And then, are you doing online consultations if people were interested, or you're still doing? Okay, great. Yeah, I would highly recommend.
Yeah, 5 a week. I mean, yes, okay. Absolutely. I love it. I mean, I've been loving it. I just got, you know, right now everyone's been cleansing, so I've been guiding people through cleanses and stuff like that. Yes. So yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Maria. It's been an absolute gift and honor to have you. And always a joy to be with you, Steph. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, guys. Have a lovely winter season. Stay safe. Gargle up. Do all I'm telling you. You'll be COVID free.
Yes. Turmeric salt. Yeah, I love it.
Turmeric salt. Yeah, very easy, simple. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on the podcast. Today's podcast was brought to you by the Practice with Clara app. That's mine. I've created almost 100 yoga classes for you to do at home or on the go. And they're available to you on your favorite device, including mobile, desktop, and TV. These classes include Vinyasa, Slow Flow, Hatha, Restorative, Yin, Mantra, Meditation. I also just had a baby, so I created prenatal yoga for all 4 trimesters. So head over to clararobertsos.com/join to learn more. Or search for the Practice with Clara app at your favorite app store. There's a 7-day free trial, so no commitment. And make sure to subscribe to the podcast. We've got lots of good stuff in store for you. Until next time, namaste.